Hello friend, and welcome back to the island. In this video, I'm going to be giving a more detailed explanation on how the portable custom crafting station works. So what we're going to do is head over to the spawn chunks that I've situated here and take a look at the commands that are behind this. Now before we go into them, there are a few options I'd like to show you that you can do. So first off, just a quick refresher, we're going to make ourselves another iron hoe, just like before. Still works, but we also have the option of setting it to immediate crafting. This is so that you actually, once the station recognizes a valid recipe, you don't have to give it a redstone input, it will just make it immediately. And that has its pros and cons. Pros being you don't need redstone or buttons in order to activate it. Cons being that if you have the wrong recipe that you want in there but it recognizes it, it could give you the wrong item. So that's why I have those two options. Another thing you can do, and I'm going to be going more in detail with this later on, you can actually change the block that is your crafting station. Let's say you have a multiplayer server and you want to incorporate both regular vanilla recipes and your own custom ones. Well, you just need to change the block name in 3 command blocks, and that will turn that block into the custom crafting station. Again, more on that later on. And the third option you have, and this is quite interesting, basically what this system is, it is a block with a wither skull, and that entity wither skull is the one testing for the recipe. But let's say you want to have this so that it does not require a custom resource pack. Well, then you're just left with this ugly sort of a dropper with a wither skull poking out of it. Hello. So you also have this option of switching it so that instead it is a armor stand with a crafting bench head. So obviously this is something crafting related. The main downside to this is the fact that you cannot place blocks on top of it, whereas with the wither skull you can place it on top, like so. So there are some of the options that you do have. So let's go into how these actually work. The first thing to understand is that there's just one scoreboard objective, and it is a stat.place block objective, or more accurately, a stat.useItem objective. And the interesting thing is that while the player uses this as a stat objective, other entities will be using this as a dummy objective, so that is very convenient. So whenever a player places said block, just wherever there is your one block, a double plant block, just the bottom part of it, will be placed there instead. Now this is the oldest trick to use for these kind of things, and I've reincorporated it into this. And from that double plant block, we surround it with barrier blocks that replace air. And what this causes it causes the block to break. It will update. So in order for all this to work, your game rule do tile drops will need to be set to true. Now once it has broken into an entity, we can give that entity a score and then run some more commands off of it. Now here are the two options we saw before, and depending on which one you picked, it will either summon a wither skull or a armor stand to that position, and it will also set block dropper if you've chosen wither skull, and a little bit more of a complex command. This is actually setting block a stone button, and this is quite interesting. I'm actually, relative to where the item is dropped, I am putting a command block that actually summons the armor stand. And the reason why this is that if you saw with the wither skull, depending on where the item is, can actually be off to the side. It can be more towards this corner or more towards this corner, and if you have that set for an armor stand, it can look quite messy. So what I do instead is that I just set block a command block there, then drop a already pressed button to activate it and get that nice and center. This can actually be extrapolated so that the wither skull is also centered as well, but it is unnecessary since you won't see it anyway. Now these are some cleanup commands. These will simply remove the double plant entity so that it's not there anymore, and reset your score so that you can continue placing blocks down again. And what this command block here does is that those entities, the wither skull or the armor stand, if they detect air when the block is removed, they will remove themselves. And this is just some miscellaneous armor stand commands to clean up for that as well. Now this entity data item, what this does is that when the entity detects error before it is actually removed, it will give a score to the dropper item, just the one dropper item near it, and it will change it so that it is a crafting table or whatever block it is you want. This is one of the 3 blocks that you'll need to change if you want a different block to be in there. So that is a very quick rundown on the setup of the commands. Now going on to the actual crafting. Now, as you can tell here, these are a bunch of droppers, and these are the things that hold your recipes. There is an option to do a test for block, where you actually test the block's data of what items are in there. But I find this to be far easier because you can actually look and see what items it is you got in there. Now, this is where I set them up, and then I have some clone commands over here that will clone them over here. So actually, we'll do that right now. Here is the fiber tunic recipe, and let's turn it into a fiber pant recipe like this. Notice that the old recipe here has been unchanged. We will just update it like this. And there it is. It has updated successfully. And now what we can do is head up to here. Now, all these command blocks here, you'll see that not all of them are actually running, just the ones I have recipes in. I'm checking it for. Each of these is a test for blocks specifically to that location, and that is critically important for any of this to work. This block down here absolutely needs to be at not in the world. It needs to be at 0, 0, 0. And again, this is something that you can go in and change. It will take a while to change, so I did try to make it quite simple with it being the small numbers like that. And it will test for those droppers, and if it successfully tests for that, it will execute this block data command on the block that it is in to replace it with the item that you want. So you see here we have the iron hoe, we have the redstone fused ingot, and this is what we're going to change. I'm going to change this to fiber. Let's just say pants. We'll keep the color, and let's change this to leather leggings like this. So now it's all set. We can actually go in there right now, and let's set this to immediate crafting. Put in some reeds. There we go, into that fiber pants. How nice is that? Let's see. Okay, and this is an interesting part. 2 more parts we're going to go over real quick here. So as you see, we can change between immediate and redstone crafting, and the way we accomplish this is the fact that a block that interacts with redstone, say like a dispenser, a dropper, piston, things like that, when they are given a redstone signal, they are actually a slightly different block. They have a different block data. And so what this does here is that it replaces the blocks near the droppers with either a redstone block or a regular stone block, so that if we detect, say, immediate crafting, it just detects the regular dropper. But if we put a redstone block there, then it will wait for that dropper to receive a redstone signal before confirming that block here and executing the comparator. And now lastly, and this is what took me the longest to figure out, and I'm very proud of how it turned about. All these command blocks here, all the command blocks in the center, are actually the exact same command. And what this command does is that it gives the item dispensed by the dropper a new item ID, and this item ID is just, it can really be anything. Originally I had as a barrier item, and I removed the barrier texture, but I eventually just changed it to a stone button because it's the least intrusive. And what is interesting about this is the fact that it has an age of 6,000 ticks. Now 6,000 ticks is 5 minutes, and that's when an item despawns. So basically when the dropper has a confirmed crafting recipe and it is replaced with the proper item, it will also give the item dispensed a data value that will essentially remove it from the world so that you can't recollect it. And if you put in the wrong crafting recipe and dispense it, nothing will happen because there was no confirmed recipe. That's it for the explanation video. If you have any questions or suggestions, please do leave them below. I'll get to them as soon as I can. I do hope that you felt inspired or at least entertained by what you saw. This is one of my favorite projects, and I'm super glad that I got to share it with you. And I'm very excited to see what the community can do with this.